Minimum items NMG hard mode run. Let's get this going.
Alrighty, so timing starts when we press continue, so that'll be 3, 2, 1, go. The loading screens are fairly long in this game. They're about 20 seconds each, so luckily that gives me time to explain what this run is. So this is minimum items, no major glitches. What effectively that means is that in this game, uh, the percentage completion is only tracking upgrades that you get, so like missile expansions or health upgrades. But you can actually go even further than that because there are major items which are not counted towards your percentage completion, but nonetheless are possibly skippable depending on which glitches you can use. And in this category, it's no major glitches, so we're not going to be flipping through walls, and we're not going to be skewing Samus's rotational data in any unusual ways or anything like that. We're just going to be using some very, very simple glitches to sometimes get a little bit higher than we would normally be able to, or shoot through some walls. And with that, we're going to collect 21 out of the 30 major items, I believe, is what the final count is. So quite a few that get skipped. The beginning of the game is going to be fairly similar to the percent runs or basically any other category. The first thing is pseudo waves. So by getting Samus's body up against certain geometry and certain animation frames, you're able to sometimes get Samus's gun to flip very slightly into the level geometry, and that will allow you to shoot through walls. I'm having a hard time with this one right here. There we go. It's generally considered one of the harder pseudo waves in the game. It's early cloak. This is going to allow us to fight the first boss of the game, technically the third boss of the game, but we're going to fight it first. It's Corpius. So Corpius takes, I believe, 13 missiles to transition to phase 2. So I was kind of hoping for a specific attack pattern where sometimes you can get Corpius to stick his head in a certain animation for the entirety of Phase 2, but unfortunately I didn't get it. I'm also having some really bad luck with this aim right now. I might have to go through phase, unfortunately, but it's not a very long fight regardless. You just kind of pelt them with missiles until you're out of missiles, and then if you play the game normally, you would have a charge shot, but one of the things about doing things out of order is that we don't have charge shot yet, so we're just fighting Corpius with the vanilla weapons, which are literally just missiles, and then the vanilla pea shooter. So that wasn't a very good fight, unfortunately, but it's still optimal to do this fight, even if you do have a little bit of difficulty due to not having the charge beam. So this first upgrade is Phantom Cloak. It doesn't get a whole lot of use throughout the run. It basically just allows us to turn invisible, which will allow us to avoid some enemies and go through these doors that have, like, cameras on them or whatever. And then the next big thing that we're going to get is Charge Beam. So we're going to just do a little bit of movement through the Emmy zone. Because we took a different path through the starting area, we never actually activated the Emmy. So, effectively, none of the Emmys, as far as I understand it, none of the Emmys in the game ever actually spawn in unless you trigger a specific cutscene where, like, they activate and come to life, and then they'll have to start prowling the Emmy zones. But because we skipped the cutscene trigger for this first Emmy, which gives you Spider Magnet when we eventually kill it, it's not actually going to be here, so I'm able to just, you know, make my way downtown and not really worry about the Emmy at all. It's not a big deal to avoid it if it is here in this first section, because it's very simple. It's still the tutorial area. But it is nice to not have to worry about it. And here we're getting an item tutorial, which is basically just telling you, like, hey, there's hidden items in some places, and there will be a certain little thing on your map that tells you where to find those. But we're not going to be collecting any of those, so totally useless tutorial for us. There is a technique you can do there to get around this water section, but unfortunately you might have seen that there was a missile pack right at the very tip of the ledge, so even if we were able to do it, and it is a very hard trick, but even if we did it, we would almost necessarily get that missile pack, which we're trying not to do. We're going to get the minimum number of items possible. Now, forgive me, I'm about to post cringe if anybody from the Dread Discord is in here, because I have been struggling with this next trick. It's the water platform skip. Effectively, we're going to try and just go through this room a little bit easier. Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't want to be here all day. I for some reason, that trick has been giving me a lot of trouble recently. It's not usually considered one of the harder ones. But effectively, you just kind of manipulate your position on that wall in order to get through and not have to press that button. It's not a huge deal or anything. It doesn't really change anything. It saves like 6 seconds if you can do it. But yeah. So we are going to get the charge beam now. So it works effectively exactly how you would expect. You just hold down the Y button, and instead of shooting a small shot, you can charge up a big shot and then shoot it. The nice thing about this weapon in this game is that we don't actually need to wait for it to charge up almost ever. If Samus does any sort of little spin, so if she like turns around in place, or if she is doing a spin jump, then for some reason the game will like pretty much automatically give you the charge beam, and this allows us to do a few things. It kind of makes it easier to abuse the pseudo sprue, which is like this yellow aura you see around Samus when she has the charge beam being held when she does a spin jump. But it also just means that we can kind of spam the charge beam, and it's like, it's not as fast as just doing the normal beam, because obviously the normal beam has an uncapped fire rate, but we do get to output more damage using the charge beam, along with missiles in a lot of fights that otherwise you would just kind of mash beam on. We call those Charlies. And you'll be seeing that in the first any central unit fight, which will come up in just a minute. So we're going to be taking the slightly long way around this section. We're going to go to a lava redirection switch. There are quite a few of these in the first few areas, and effectively what they do is they just redirect the thermal energy of the area so that you can go through certain doors, and sometimes it closes other doors. So this one is going to open the way to get to the first central unit, which is like the mother brain sort of things that control the enemies. And you need to defeat that in order to get the Omega Stream and Omega Cannon in order to defeat the enemies. And, yeah, so we'll see what's that in just a second. Oop. First, this room has a fun little bit of movement. It's kind of, awkward to get. I just completely mess it up. But ideally, you shoot the first enemy on the floor, and then you spam shots at the enemy on top, and then you do a dash melee over to kind of finish it off. You're going to be seeing me do a lot of dash melees and slides off of ledges throughout the run. The basic movement of the game really revolves around that, because effectively Samus has different speeds for every sort of state she can be in. And being in the air, she's very, very slow, so we want to spend as little time in the air as possible. So I had to go around this little spire in order to go into this door so that I could go back through the door so I could trigger the cutscene to activate the enemy, because if you don't do that and then you go kill the central unit, you can get the Omega Stream and the Omega Cannon, but the enemy won't be there for you to kill, so you just soft lock the game. And I think I have one too few missiles to finish this thing. Wait, I was wrong. So we're just going to finish it off with little beams. I totally forgot, actually. I lied earlier when I said we're going to see the Charlies soon. The charge beam, while it is very good and very fast, it is still not that strong when you only have the normal power beam, which only does one shot. When we get the wide beam, we're going to be doing 3 shots for every 1 shot that we actually shoot. I know it sounds weird, but anyway, so that'll just triple our damage output, and that'll make it so that charge beam plus missile is much more damage output effective. For this first white enemy, you basically just get there as fast as possible. If you're really fast, you can actually get there in time to make it so that you can just hold your ground, firing at his face the whole time, and then jump over. Or you don't even need to jump over him. He'll just like break the faceplate before he reaches you, and then you start charging up and you can shoot him before he moves again. However, in this, I just moved a little bit slower. It's really, really tight on that one. So we have to jump over, and it only loses like a second or two. Yeah. So now we have Spider Magnet. You see these blue surfaces on the walls, and we can cling to those. You're supposed to just like climb up them, but they've made it so that when you jump off of a magnet wall, you can instantly turn back around on yourself, so you can just like kind of single wall jump as though it were Super Metroid or Zero Mission. Normally in this game, when you do a wall jump, you can't just double back that easily. You have to either kind of abuse certain properties of Samus's movement with the Morph Ball, or alternatively, just like wait. It just pushes you away and you have to like wait until you're a certain amount into your jump before you can double back. But on the magnet walls, you can just go. So next up, we're going to be seeing a trick called Zip Skip. I'm going to shoot this thing, jump up here, get up slowly, shoot this thing, jump, shoot, dash. And that gets me over onto this little part of the level without needing to ride the slow magnet rail that takes you across normally. It's very, very scary on hard mode in these low percent categories because you end up with like 39 health. Sometimes you have like 59 health depending on what the drops are for the enemies that you kill on the way in. But it means that if you try and just like jump straight up the magnet shaft, which has all the flamethrowers, it doesn't work. Normally you have enough HP that you can just tank it, but on hard mode, the flamethrowers do double damage and you've taken twice as much damage coming in, so you kind of have to like finesse it a little bit more. Luckily, it's not too bad. Next up is Catarus. This is a area that used to be really boring, and now it's kind of one of the more like defining areas of the game. The big trick to look out for is going to be in like 5 minutes, and it's called Atom Skip. So we have the Atom AI giving us directions throughout the game. I almost died there. Very quickly, we're going to go through like 2 more areas, and then everything in the game will one-shot me pretty much, so I look forward to that. Luckily, by that point, you have enough equipment that you're pretty much just a tank and just walking through things, killing everything, not really worrying about anything. I accidentally save. Never want to do that. Waste time. Like 2 seconds. But yeah, so that was the last time we're going to be talking to Adam right there. Funnily enough, the Adam that we would talk to next, if we had to, would be the one where he tells you that you should accept your helplessness. So I kind of like to think of Atom Skip as rejecting your helplessness. Sorry. I should say accepting your helplessness, but not too fast. We're going to do another damage boost in this room, if I can get it right. I think I did. Yep, just knock yourself back into the magnet, and you can get up to this area just a little bit faster. And then there is a hell run that you can do in this next section that saves 2 seconds. It is possible on any difficulty category, and because the damage from the environment is exactly the same regardless of difficulty. So like it only scales damage that's directly dealt. So either damage from enemies or damage from like flamethrowers. But if it's just like because the area is too cold or too hot or it's lava, that doesn't change. It's exactly the same. So you can even do that hell run on Dread mode. I think I got the worst spawn I did. So this is the magnet Emmy. It is really annoying. Sometimes it's just in that doorway, and technically you can run through the door and jump over it if you're really confident, but there's like some spawns that are like, they look like they're one of the other spawns, but they're just slightly worse. So I always like to just play it a little bit safe if I don't see the Emmy in that first room, because it means that it's in the next room, basically right in the doorway. So this is another lava redirection. We're basically just kind of doing a big little puzzle, or like a big movement puzzle through Catarus. We're just sort of trying to make our way through into Dairon. We're not actually going to be collecting any items or anything in this area. It's entirely just kind of getting through.
Would there be a chance for a donation?
Yes.
All right, we have $25 from Bonnie Dimples. Greetings from beautiful Two Harbors, Minnesota, here on the Lake Superior Shore. Wish I could have been part of the Midwest Speed Fest this time of year, but an obligation to be part of my sister's wedding. Speaking of, I want to make this donation to my sister Kat and her now husband, Mike. Shoutouts to Helix, Gooby, Sexrex, Wolfenstein, and the legendary Moon Blaze Wolf, and all the rest of the Midwest Speed Fest team. I love you all and can't wait to see you at the next event. Much love from Bonnie. Also have a $50 donation from Nathan Collins with no comment, but thank you so much. Make sure we're getting those donations in to support One Iowa and get into those incentives for tomorrow's runs, Left 4 Dead and the Super Monkey Ball Bid War.
So this is Atom Skip. It is, essentially, we are going to be going over this big spire that we're obviously not supposed to go over. It requires a, kind of a quintuple frame perfect wall jump sequence, but 4 of the wall jumps can be buffered. So it's not quite as bad as it looks, but right now I'm having trouble on the 3rd jump. Oh, that was a little too low. This trick saves 3 minutes in the run, so even having as much trouble as I am right now, this is definitely worth doing. Oh my goodness. Oh, that was almost it. Oh, that was almost it. So you can see we're trying to grab that little magnet there at the top. There we go. Okay. So that was, like I said, it is not quite as bad as it looks, but it is still definitely one of the more annoying tricks in the run. I guess also it's, yeah, no, correct, because you, the inputs that you need to actually do, quote-unquote, frame perfectly, there are the little melee that I was doing on the corner of the wall that just kind of, like, boosts you into a very specific place where you can wall jump at the very bottom of that little corner there. And then you need to do that wall jump buffered frame perfect to be first frame. And then, you know, every other wall jump obviously also first frame, because the first frame wall jump makes it so that you wall jump slightly farther away from the wall. You don't actually just wall jump off the wall itself. And that makes it so that you're able to just get the tiny little bit higher, and it's like pretty much pixel perfect, being able to grab that bottom magnet. But the way that that results in us skipping Atom is that the section of Catarus that we went over, is where the next Atom would be. And if we talk to that next Atom, then the game would update and say, okay, so you've talked to, like, Atom 6, and so now we'll make it so that when you go into Atom 7 room, it will lock you in, and you'll have to talk to Atom before you continue. But if you never talk to Atom 6, then the Atom 7 room never gets activated, and therefore you never have to talk to Atom. So when you go in there, you can talk to Atom, but it won't make it so that it's, like, locking you in and making you talk to him. It's entirely optional from this point forward, and obviously we're just going to be running straight past him. That's like 15 seconds each every single time. It also, incidentally, is a faster way to go through Catarus just generally, so it kind of serves the double purpose of saving like a minute and a half in Catarus and then a minute and a half and not having to talk to Dad every single time. And now we're just going to go through this last little bit and get into Dairon, where we're actually going to be getting another upgrade, which is the Wide Beam. So the weapons that we're actually going to be skipping in this run are Space Jump, Ice Missiles, Flash Shift, Pulse Radar, and I feel like I'm forgetting one, but, you know, we'll skip them when we skip them. Effectively, it basically, you get, in the normal and rookie difficulties, you skip both Ice Missiles and Spin Jump by doing a specific damage boost in Arenia much later in the run. And in hard mode, you don't have enough health to do that damage boost, so you have to get one of either Ice Missiles or Spin Jump, and I'll explain why that is when we get there. But just wanted to comment on that, in case anybody was curious about the difference. Whoop! That was... There we go. 6 times the try. 2nd times the charm. But yeah, if anybody was wondering about what exactly was different between normal and hard. And rookie is exactly the same as normal, and dread is exactly the same as hard, also, I should say. I mean, like, obviously there's differences in terms of, like, what happens, but in terms of what you're able to skip and the route you take, they're the same. So that dark room was a little bit scary. Those bats, depending on the attack that they do, they can kill you in one shot. And that first little green bat that you run past, like, you have to move pretty much perfectly. If you just, like, linger a little bit in that room, then he'll hit you as you're trying to do the quick rise up through... Oh my gosh, like there, here we go, is an example of how easily you can die to these green bats. Luckily, this game has a pretty generous checkpoint system, so it's not quite as intimidating as low percent in, say, Super Metroid, where just, you know, you lose the entire run if something goes wrong. It's still a little bit annoying, but luckily that was one of the faster deaths we could have taken. It's, like, right outside of the checkpoint. The checkpoints in this game are usually just, like, when you interact with an object that changes the world in some way, or when you collect an item, or when you leave an active enemy zone. A nice little caveat to the active enemy zone thing is that, you know, in Aria, there was actually 2 enemies, and we just ran past one of them. One of them is a broken enemy that you're supposed to fight as, like, the true tutorial to how enemies work and everything. But we did some pseudo waves to not have to go into the broken enemy zone, and that means that even though the broken enemy doesn't ever go into, like, the main enemy zones, it's still considered an active enemy zone. Shoutouts to the wide beam blocks. We call them Pedros in the community, and everybody hates Pedro because for some reason you shoot a charge wide beam at it, it's supposed to open, and sometimes it just doesn't. The hurt boxes for the 3 little, like, sensor nodes that you shoot are very, very small, and for some reason they're very, very strict, even though technically a charge beam does a small amount of splash damage, so you would think that, like, it pretty much works all the time as long as you shoot the general area. It checks, like, pretty much perfectly where those nodes are if those 3 places all got shot on the same frame. And so if you are, like, on the wrong frame of your walking cycle, or if you're just, like, angle it slightly wrong, it'll just completely mess up. It gets less annoying when you have diffusion beam, which will come a little bit later. Right now we're going to be getting Morph Ball. That is the green enemy that was bothering me a little bit earlier. And we're finally going to be able to see a little bit of what the Charlies I was talking about earlier are like. So I mentioned earlier that you are able to do a quick charge beam by just doing a spin jump, and that is going to be combined... if I can get it right. There we go. Okay. That's going to be combined with a missile shot, because there is a cooldown for, obviously, like, the manual cooldown of, like, you need to get to the ground and then do another spin jump before you can do a charge beam, and there is a small cooldown on missiles. You can't just, like, fire them as fast as you mash the button. So both of them are kind of on a timer, and the missile timer is much, much shorter, but you can kind of just overlap the wait time on both by just doing a quick charge and then instantly following it with a Charlie, or with a missile rally, and then just doing it again. All these enemies, by the way, they all look kind of scary, but they're pretty much all solved. Like, we know exactly where to move, and then just, like, plant your feet, start shooting, and you're never going to die to an enemy unless something goes wrong in the setup. So for that one, like, I just run forward, shooting, so that it breaks the blob, and then as soon as I go underneath the tunnel, I just start aiming down. And you pretty much never die. And now we have Morph Ball. So Morph Ball has a few interesting properties. One of them is that it has a faster fall speed, so whenever we're falling down, like, a long shaft, if I can help it, and it's not gonna, like, cause problems because it would make me need to, like, unmorph, remorph, and waste time that way, we're gonna want to fall down shafts in Morph Ball form. The other thing is that it is slightly slower than sliding, so if possible, we're going to try and slide into all tunnels instead of rolling into them. And the other interesting thing about them that you will see in the Kraid fight is that they kind of, when you morph, it kind of kills your horizontal momentum, and that will allow us to do infinitely high wall jumps off of a single wall. So that's really fun. It's one of the techniques that gets used pretty much just in that one place in normal runs, because like later, just like a few minutes later, you get flash shift, which means that you can just like wall jump off a wall and then instantly flash backwards. However, in this category, we're going to skip flash shift, so we actually get to see more of these single wall jumps in minimum items, no major glitches, than you do in pretty much every other category, including unrestricted, because even though unrestricted can obviously skip more items, they require using glitches that require flash shift, so this is actually the only category in Metroid Dread that on purpose skips flash shift, I believe, except for like obviously like partial run, or like you end timing at crate or whatever. Like as far as full game runs, this is the only one that skips flash shift. But for now, we're going to be getting Varia Suit, which is not so scary on hard mode, low percent. It can be really, really scary on Dread mode, and you do definitely need to keep an eye out on this difficulty because there are a lot of flamethrowers and you only have 99 health, and I believe every tick does 20 or 30 damage. I just try not to get hit, so I don't really think about the damage values that much. But, point being, just make sure that you know exactly the way to go through. I just didn't have the brain part there, but yeah, make sure you know exactly the way to go through. Take off of this here. So in Dread mode, those like flamethrowers at the very end can sometimes kill you, and if you're like a little bit careless and you take a lot of damage on the way up, they can also kind of put you in really critical health here at the end. But in this, as long as you just make sure you got everything, you know where everything is, it's not too bad. Now we have the Varia Suit, which will give us immunity to the flamethrowers. However, we still take damage from lava, which is going to be a minor concern. We have 59 health coming out of Varia Climb, and depending on our health that we have in this next section, that's going to slightly change how I approach the lead up to the Kraid fight. So like 84 health is perfectly fine. The enemies that are on the way, they're called like Obsidiathons or whatever. Anyway, they're these big rock guys. They shoot fire at you. If you just run into them, you'll take contact damage. The attack damage is much higher. It also won't kill you in one hit, but it's much higher. Pretty much every enemy, if you just like bonk into them, you'll take less damage than if they actually attack you. And so the point that I'm getting at is that these rock guys will fill up an entire tunnel, like floor to ceiling. And so you're supposed to either kill them, or yeah, you're supposed to kill them. But we have just barely enough health that we're going to be able to just face tank the first one. The second one I'm actually going to need to kill with either missiles or a counter. Probably a counter, just a little bit easier. So yeah, 84 health. I believe it does like 45-ish. Yeah, something like that. Okay, I actually did not get 99 health from that, which is fine. Theoretically, I don't need to take any more damage at all. It's very hard to avoid damage from these guys, though. You notice I said they do 45 damage and they have 44 health, so I'm not going to risk trying to jump over that guy. It could be done, but it's 1 second, so potentially losing almost a minute. The next up is Kraid. We're going to be seeing these single wall jumps. Before that, we're going to be seeing his first phase where he's all chained up. There are 3 parts to the fight, basically. This first part, you want to just use normal charge shots on him using the quick charge method. The second part, you want to do Charlie's. The reason why we don't do Charlie's on the first section is because he takes half damage when he's not attacking, and we only have a very limited number of missiles available, so we want to avoid wasting them on phase where he takes half damage. There we go. Okay. Whew. A little bit tricky. But yeah, so like I was saying earlier, effectively when you morph, it kind of kills your horizontal momentum. So even though the game like doesn't let you double back until a certain amount of time afterwards, you can kind of stall out that time and not go too far away from the wall by just doing a morph in between every single wall jump, and that will allow you to double back. And so that's great. Pretty simple boss fight. Had a little bit of trouble getting up into the wall, but otherwise it was a pretty clean fight. The annoying thing is that sometimes when you finish the fight, you'll have 0 missiles, and you need 1 missile to get this diffusion beam, and there is an enemy that infinitely respawns there. So you're never going to be like soft locked or anything, but sometimes it's just like random what pickups it gives you, and sometimes it gives you nothing at all, and that's really sad. So I was very happy to see that fight end with 3 missiles, because I'm also going to need another 2 actually in these areas coming up. Luckily I got just a crap ton of missile drops, so I'm all filled up going into Diron number 2. So this next section, if you've seen any sort of any percent run of this game, it's going to be very similar. We're going to be getting the grapple beam, and the grapple beam is going to allow us to get bombs early, and then we're going to use the bombs to go to Brenia and not get flash shift. So that'll be exciting. The early grapple is a kind of test of your ability to do a technique called slide jump, also known as coyote jumps. They work a little bit differently in this game than they do in some other platformers, where in some platformers you'll just like run off of a ledge and then there's some courtesy frames. There's actually 0 courtesy frames if you just run off of a ledge in Metroid Dread, but if you slide off of a ledge, there's like almost a full second of leniency. And that was very intentionally programmed in. They even included it as a tip for the game on the official Nintendo website as a fun fact. So they definitely intended this as a sequence break. Not that it would really like affect things. So if that was a glitch, it would obviously be a minor glitch, so we do it anyway. But it's just interesting that these are the sort of things they had planned out when they made Dread. And yeah. So the other thing that is nice about having a grapple beam is that it's going to allow us to pull ourselves towards magnet walls, not just specifically grapple points. And in this run where we don't have flash shift, and there's not that many opportunities to use speed booster outside of the... I mean, there's a few places to see some interesting speed booster stuff. But before we get either of that, and even after we would have gotten that in other categories, we're going to have the grapple beam, which allows us to pull ourselves to these magnet walls that you see right here. And that is faster than running. And running is just a usual means of traversal in minimum items. The grapple beam does as much damage as 1 pea shooter, like not even like the 3 of the wide beam, just the 1 shot. So it's kind of funny whenever we accidentally shoot something with grapple beam, because it just like, takes absolutely no damage, it no-sells it. So just into Tartaria, get the grapple beam, getting right back out. Kind of one of the sillier little parts of the game. But it's definitely worth it to have the grapple beam early, because if we didn't get it now, we would have to get it much later after Speed Booster, and it would require a much more circuitous route. In some categories, that's actually worth it, because you get Screw Attack in the same trip, but in this category, we're going to be getting Screw Attack at a very normal part of the game. Because the ways you normally get Screw Attack early require either Flash Shift or Space Jump, and those are both skippable items. So we're stuck taking the long way to Screw Attack. Which I'm honestly fine with. I think Screw Attack kind of trivializes a lot of combat in this game. This is really a challenge run category if you think about it. Like I said, the damage from environmental factors like lava doesn't change with difficulty, so I had a little bit of trouble moving into this area. And the ice enemy, or the speed enemy. It's making me pay for it. Oh my gosh, okay, I thought I was about to get spotted there. That was going to be really bad, because if you get spotted by the enemy, it actually locks the doors out of the enemy zone, so that would have actually required me to counter the enemy there, if that happened. So those enemies, you can survive one hit from them, but unfortunately, because I took the lava through an earlier section, I had 61 health instead of 99. They do like 80-ish damage on hard mode, I believe. Let's try that again. There we go. So now you're going to see a fun little pseudo wave. This one we just kind of crawl into the hole. This one we do a double turnaround. Pause buffer. Having some trouble. There we go. So yeah, the pause buffer is kind of a different pseudo wave method than what I showed before, where we just kind of like bonk their heads against the wall. for the double turn, or for the pause buffer turnaround, what we do is we sort of go right up against a wall so that Samus's like front foot is kind of flipping into the wall, and then we crouch and we turn around, and now our entire back is flipping into the wall. And so for like 1 frame, if you turn around and aim and shoot, then the shot will go through the wall. And so we can just pause and then hold L and then hold it angle we want and then press B, and that will release the charge shot frame perfectly, and that allows us to do a lot of pseudos that would otherwise be extraordinarily difficult. So yeah, this is Bomb. It can be used in casual challenge runs. Pretty interestingly, it has the ability to gain arbitrary vertical height by just doing infinite bomb jumps. We will see a little bit of that in this run, but unfortunately, we have usually other ways of getting around. And it is very slow to just go with bomb, 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 bomb. However, it will allow us to do something very, very cool in the next area. So for Flash Shift, there's kind of like 3 different ways you can handle it. Typically, what you would do... I thought I was going to die there. That thing sometimes shoots its thorns a little bit earlier. But yeah, so the 3 different ways you typically get Flash Shift are either 1, you like go into the water and then you go all around and then you just like kind of take the normal route. Because we got early grapple, we can actually skip most of that by just going a little bit into the water and then pulling a block and then just kind of going through and then getting in that way. However, that's a waste of time because as long as you have bombs, what you can do instead is sort of bomb jump in place in front of a door that requires you normally to flash shift over like a floor sensor, but you can just stay airborne long enough that you skip, that you make it think that you're not on it anymore. However, we're not going to do that either because the flash shift doesn't actually like let you do anything special. It's just kind of like a fun ability that lets you dodge stuff and it's a little bit faster, but it doesn't actually unlock anything really, at least not in vanilla gameplay. Try to do a cloak slide underneath that enemy. It's fairly specific. It's not too tight, but there's like 2 textures on the floor. You tend to like want to slide starting at one and then cloak and then uncloak on the other one. Just mistimed that a little bit, so that's unfortunate. Okay, there we go. I was a little bit worried because I did that a little bit earlier. I thought I overcorrected that too much, but you know, in it. But yeah, so the flash shift doesn't really let you do anything. And so we're just going to be doing exactly the same trick that you could do to get flash shift a little bit faster, but instead we're going to do it on the door above flash shift. Because the door that we would do it normally to get flash shift fast is the one that makes it so you can get flash shift a little bit faster, and it's normally trying to like test, did you get flash shift? Okay, prove it by like getting out of this room using flash shift. But instead we're going to use it on this one, which is the door that is meant to test whether or not you have flash shift to go into the next area. There we go, just like that. And so we are free. This is kind of like the start of minimum items in earnest, is doing some of these boss fights without flash shift. They can be a little bit tricky. For this first section here, we don't actually have anything different with flash shift. We just sort of do what we normally do. We do these pseudo waves. And then we're going to do a water bomb jump where we store the fact that we are in the air, basically. Sorry, that's a horrible beginning to that explanation. So for water bomb jumps, the way they work is the game doesn't want you to gain arbitrary vertical height underwater. So what it does is after the first bomb jump that you do off of the floor with the water, or when you're in water, it will make it so that only the next bomb jump will actually work, so you can only get like 2 bombs worth of height. However, it doesn't like update your status when you morph between the two forms, as long as you don't touch the ground or whatever. So effectively, you can trick the game into thinking that it's your first bomb jump off of the floor when you do it in midair off of a unmorphed jump, which is higher than a morphed jump. And that will allow us to get a little bit of extra height. It doesn't help us do anything too crazy. It only is like an extra tile or two of height. But, you know, an extra tile or two of height in a tile-based game can be kind of a big deal. So yeah. Next up, we're going to be getting Speed Booster. And we get a fun little shortcut here. We just do one single wall jump in order to get into the arena. I should also mention that since we got Diffusion Beam, the damage output on Charge Beam has been even greater. So Charlie's, they like barely outpace smashing in Central Unit fight that I did for Morph Ball, but for Speed Booster, it's substantially faster. And like all the other enemies, we kind of just do our setup. We get into position, we shoot at its face, and then we shoot its uncovered face. Yeah, so this is Speed Booster, and this is kind of the point where the run, like pretty much in every category, like the big change in how your movement goes is when you get Speed Booster. Speed Booster in this game doesn't give you any speed boost until you actually run far enough. But once you do, you move tremendously faster. It also gives you access to Shine Spark, which is even faster than that. However, it does have some limitations, like the fact that you have to charge it, the fact that it only goes in one direction once you start it, unless you put it into a slope. And then you can refresh it and it just goes back into Speed Booster. But the Speed Booster is very, very fluid in this game. It's much more lenient on like the different states you can keep Samus in while not losing speed than it is in other games. So like, for example, you saw me do a bunch of wall jumps there. And you can also do a few other things. You can be in Morph Ball form. There's just a lot of cool stuff you can do with the Speed Booster in this game. I don't know what it is. I'm having difficulty getting that Speed Booster to activate right now. But yeah. So it's not a very long charge up in this game. However, there's no way to like quicken up or there's no way to make the charge faster without using a glitch, which we don't have access to because, again, Flash Shift is required for that glitch, and we skip Flash Shift. The other thing that Flash Shift is going to make a little bit harder is this next boss fight, or not having it, rather. So this next boss fight will kill you with almost everything. Every one of its attacks will kill you in one hit. Its contact damage will kill you in 2 hits, and its attack patterns are random. It's not a very long boss fight, so it might... I hopefully will make it seem like it's silly that I'm even bringing it up, but this can be one of the scarier boss fights in minimum items in hard mode. It's also a little bit annoying to get into. Luckily I got the store. It's a very tight store. Okay, luckily I got a favorable attack pattern for the first one. When he does those 3 rapid shots, it means that I can just jump straight over him. Basically all of his attacks, if you just do like 1 step forward at the very start of battle, it'll work out fine. But if he does the slow 3 shots, he actually tracks you in between shots with that attack pattern, so you have to do like a slightly delayed jump and like move in a very specific way. So there's always like a slight annoyance. You have to always be like a little bit mindful of specifically which boss you're fighting and how they move and whatnot. Yeah, so that was the Chozo Robo. There are 6 of those in the game. Luckily, 4 of them you'll fight in pairs, so it's not quite as bad. But yeah, they're all basically the same. They have the same attacks. We're going to be fighting one again pretty much right away. We're going to be going through Dairon and then into Berenia. to make our way to Gavaran, and that's where we'll fight the boss. We're not going to, like, collect anything on the way there or anything. We're just platforming right now. One thing that is fun about the Robo-Chozo fight, though, is that it is a very manipulatable boss fight. So there are specific moves that it'll do where if you, meant to shine spot there. But yeah, there's specific attacks where if you react in a certain way, it'll just always do the same attacks in response. So we're going to be using that in the gold variant fight. Meant to shine spot just a little bit higher there, obviously. That wouldn't have killed me if I had gotten contact damage there, but it's just always annoying, because sometimes it'll hit you, that last enemy, it'll like hit you and it'll knock you back, throw you back in the water, and then you'll try and get back up instantly, and then it hits you again, because the timing's a little bit weird like that. But yeah. So I would say this is kind of the part of the game where most things end up killing you in one hit. Basically any attack will kill you in one hit from this point forward. And coming up in a little bit, we'll be at the point where pretty much any contact damage will also kill you. This is kind of dread mode at home, if you want to think about it like that. Yeah, so luckily the dodging of the little laser enemy is much easier this time around, because you can literally just speed boost past it. Yeah, the only reason why we couldn't come up here earlier is because we needed to watch a cutscene where Quiet Robo, who's like a dead Chozo, unlocks a little opening for you. We just went through that opening. Otherwise, we could have just gone here the first time. So we're going to do another pseudo wave here in order to skip the underwater Dragaiga boss. This one's more simple than the other one. It's really, really, really easy. All you do is you just slide into the wall, you turn around twice, and then you shoot, and your shot just goes through the wall. I don't even really understand the mechanics of that one. It doesn't feel like you're ever actually in the wall, but that's the game mechanics. But yeah, so that was the Dragaiga skip. Dragaiga is kind of like the spore spawn of this game, if you're familiar with Super Metroid. Any category that can skip it does. But yeah, this next boss, very, very annoying. There is a manipulation that I'm going to be doing, because like I said, the Chozo Robo, unlike most of the bosses, is semi-deterministic. There are certain ways you can manipulate it. So I'm going to be doing a very specific setup at the start. We're going to open with a Shine Spark, but we don't have room to do 2 Shine Sparks like we did with the Silver Robo. So we are going to need to actually fight it a little bit. So yeah, by doing it this way, luring him over to one side and then doing this, you'll always do that little charge beam. He usually does the red wave after, and that's it, that's the fight. Whew, okay, I was actually really scared about that one. You can kind of get Death Loop there really, really easily. If I'm doing like a deathless run attempt in this category, that's usually like the first place where I'm actually concerned about dying, which I know is kind of funny because I have 3 deaths in this run so far, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, now we're just kind of making our way through Gavaran, and we are getting the super missiles. These are very, very nice because in most categories you kind of don't really care about the missile upgrades because they do slightly more damage, but they also fire much slower. So it's really like more of a missile efficiency upgrade than a DPS upgrade. However, when you only got 15 missiles, you really appreciate that missile efficiency upgrade. Super missiles are just going to open the way to the next area of Loon, where we're going to be freeing the X. The X parasites are basically just like little body snatchers that look like jelly. And what they're going to do is, when we free them, they're going to transform every enemy in the game into an X variant of themselves. Sometimes they look different. Most of them don't look different. But I'm pretty sure all of them do more damage. I might be wrong about that. Regardless, they generally make the worlds a little bit more hostile. But in exchange, you get to progress the story, which is required with no major glitches. So it's kind of just going to be a little dip in, dip out sort of thing. We're going to go in. We're going to get one upgrade. We're going to fight one boss. This boss is not anything to worry about at all. Is the Chozo Warriors. And they're just like little X-infested suits of armor. They shoot goop. They're fun. They're little guys. Love them. There's like also 6 of them in the game. So these like goopy guys, they do, I believe, 90 damage on hard mode. So I'm going to be trying to avoid both of them, and I did. Let's go. I always try to do the ball spark on the first one on hard mode because it means that you're guaranteed to not take damage from it. And then if you do mess up on the second guy, you're at least at full health, so you get to survive with 9 HP. On normal mode, I just ram through them both. I don't care. It only does 45 damage. Who cares? Messed up the shiny part there. Ideally, what I would do is I would keep the speed onto the floor of this room, then I would store, come up, and then shine spark this boss door. Because that's a little bit faster than doing the counter. But, you know, it's not a big deal. So yeah, you may notice a variety of methods being employed during this fight. You know, there's a lot of different methods at your disposal when you have the plasma beam. You could shoot him, or you could shoot him. Personally, I'm a big fan of shooting him. I think it's really cool when you shoot him. And he takes damage when you shoot him, so that's really cool. Definitely my favorite boss in the game. That's a good point, Pumpkin. What if I shot him? But yeah. So this is the big sort of diverging point. There's 2 main routes you can do in minimum items, no major glitches. I kind of explained earlier that on the lower difficulties, you would do a damage boost to skip both Ice Missile and Spin Boost. However, we don't have enough health to survive that on hard mode. So we can either get Ice Missiles or we can get Spin Boost. I am more comfortable with the Spin Boost route, and I personally find it more fun. So that is what we're going to be seeing today. It's kind of an interesting route, so if anybody hasn't seen it before, you're in for a treat. The first thing we do is we're going to have to get past the ice enemy, and that guy is very, very annoying. Nope, okay. We're done. Yeah. So the way the ice enemy works is it doesn't actually chase you. It just looks at you, and if it sees you, you will get encased in ice. And if you're encased in ice, you take a certain amount of damage over time. Oh my gosh. I think he's gone. Nope, I'm gone. Okay, got the counter at least. So that went poorly. However, luckily, the next part is even more annoying. So, to get to the area where we get Spin Boost, I'm going to have to go through the enemy zone again. And I'm going to go right out because I did not hear the beeps. And when you don't hear the beeps, it means you get to one specific spawn. I did not hear the beeps again. Let's try that one more time. Basically, there's one spawn that I don't really have a good way to get around. I hear the beeps there, and I also see him on the map, so that means that he's not in this room. If I don't hear the beeps, it means that he's in this room directly in the water, and he will always catch you. if you try to go through that room with the beeps or when you don't hear the beeps. There's just, like, really no way around it that I found. Should also probably mention this is one of the lesser run categories for Metroid Dread. It is, I think it has, like, 3 active runners. So it's a little bit underexplored. Not very widely known about. There are multiple category extensions that have more runners. My personal favorite. But yeah, so we're done dealing with the ice enemy. Good news. So now that we have Spin Boost, we're going to be able to go through the underwater section and just kind of jump over the gaps that in the lower difficulties we would be damage boosting over. And in exchange, we don't have to fight the ice enemy. We don't have to fight the ice enemy central unit. And yeah, pretty much just those 2 things. Next up, we're going to be going into the green teleportal. I just made use of a trick called Water Spin Boost. Effectively, like I said before, the game doesn't want you to gain height underwater very much. However, it also doesn't like it when you get stuck on corners. So whenever you kind of like jump into a corner, it will try and push you past that corner and sort of like put you above, sort of like where the trajectory of your jump would have naturally led you. And so on that specific piece of geometry, that whole slope is basically, you can kind of think of it as one big corner. And so if you jump and you do your double jump in just a specific place, it'll put you up high enough to grab that ledge. You use the technique with space jump a lot more in certain other categories, which is usually much easier because when you have space jump, you can kind of just like keep jumping at that corner over and over again. But with spin boost, it's just a double jump, so you just kind of like, you get one shot at it and then you fall to the ground, try again. But yeah. So water bomb jump up to this green door here. Basically everything here is going to kill you, I should say. Like, the very, very smallest enemies will not one-shot you. But these guys, they'll kill you. Any attack will kill you. You're just very, very, very fragile in the Barenia section on the way to Gravity Suit. We're going to Gravity Suit. If we had gotten the ice missiles instead, we'd be able to take a much less circuitous route. There's kind of like a hidden entrance that has a bunch of flaming trees in the way, that if you have the ice missiles, you can just kind of like take that path instead. But if you do that, then you have to fight ice enemy and central unit. So it kind of evens out a little bit. The route where you get ice missiles is definitely faster by like 50 seconds or so when I timed it. Yeah, I think it's cool that there's like 2 viable routes for minimum items. So yeah. You may also notice that I've been doing a lot of jumping underwater. I don't know if I've explained that. Basically, underwater, that is one of Samus's many game states, and when she is underwater, if she is walking, she actually goes slower than if she's falling, I think is how it works. And so you want to be like doing like little mini hops basically as often as possible. Those guys were much higher than I've seen them before. I don't know what was up with that. Just kind of kill them, make sure they don't get into my way. Now we're going to do another pause buffered turnaround pseudo wave in order to break a blob to open up this ledge so I can go up here. Because there's basically like unbreakable terrain in the way between us and the gravity suit, so we need to break these blobs so this big piece of metal just falls down, breaks everything for us. And now we can get to gravity suit. So gravity suit obviously lets us move underwater. It also makes us immune to cold environmental damage. The Vari suit protected us from heat. So this is our last like big defensive upgrade. There's a slight reprieve because we're about to go back to the first area of the game, Artaria. And the enemies there, some of them are stronger, but some of them are definitely weaker as well. And so, you know, on our way to Gravity Suit, basically everything will kill us. Not everything will kill us in Frozen Artaria, which, by the way, it's going to be frozen. So basically the story here is that when we freed the X were all released, and they attacked the nuclear, or like the geothermal core of the planet, so now everything's frozen, so we gotta go, like, kill the X that is attacking the thermal core of the planet. Really cool set piece. Most of the main any percent categories skip it. In minimum items, we don't have any of the necessary components to skip it. So yeah, there's gonna be a few fights that are kind of difficult here. The first one is another one of those Chozo warriors. It's not too bad. We just kind of do a Shine Spark and then all-out offensive. The Shine Spark is especially important in this fight because the Red Chozo and the Gold Chozo variants both have shields, and the shield is it goes away when you deal half of their health in damage, basically, or you can actually just attack the shield or counter it or something. But countering it takes time, so ideally you just want to deal half of its damage. And luckily, the Shine Spark will deal about half damage against almost every boss in the game. There are a few little exceptions. Next up, this is the Climb Frozen Edition. It's a little bit annoying because you got these enemies that if you let them live too long, they will just kind of explode all over you, and just there's no way to damage them once they enter their explosion phase. We do another Shine Spark. There is a door that we skipped earlier because we had to slide through it and there's a missile in the way, but now that we have Shine Spark, we can just Shine Spark above the missile, and that allows us to get through this section. There's actually no other way to get to the Catarus elevator during the Frozen section other than taking that door. Oh my gosh. So it's very good that we have Shine Spark. You can do it without Shine Spark if you just do like a slide, morph, jump, but it's much, much tighter and also a little bit slower if you do it that way. It's also kind of cool because there's that enemy that, in the old way of doing it, we would like Shine Spark straight up, counter hit, and then go through the door. But that's also slower. So we just store the spark at the bottom, go up, and then Shine Spark above the missile pickup. So yeah, Frozen Catarus is much shorter than Frozen Artaria. We're kind of just going to be going to the bottom and then going through a few doors, and we're going to be fighting Experiment Z7. This is a rather difficult boss casually. It's also somewhat difficult in no major glitches, minimum items. We have 15 super missiles, which, by the way, deal less damage than ice missiles would if we had gotten those. And the only attack that it has that won't instantly kill us is a damage over time attack, which will kill us in like 1 second. So that goop on the floor, if we stand in it for like a second, we die. Okay, that was close. The breath itself also does damage. Yeah. Thought I was gonna do the longer breath there. A little bit unfortunate. Luckily, the boss, once we get through the first phase, is pretty much over. So let's just try that again. I should also mention that there is, if you get it first try, there's a rather frustrating bit of randomness to this boss, because this breath phase, you can just keep pelting it with damage the whole time it's doing the breath on the ground. But there is a second attack that it has, where it just swipes at you, and it's invincible for pretty much all of this. Like, you can't hurt it during this entire phase. So there we go. Now we have to do 2 charge shots on each of its tentacles, because we don't have the missiles to kill it faster than that. We have time to do like 11 charge shots, so it's not too tight, but if you mess up, it can be really frustrating. And now finally we have the Flappy Bird section, where we are going to see the same pattern every single time. So I'm just memorizing the pattern and jumping accordingly. Store here, jump over this last one, and then Shine Spark him. And then regardless of how much health he has, when you Shine Spark him, he is hard-coded to die instantly. So that is a really cool way of getting through that boss. Except I'm going to be going for a... Whoop! Messed that up. Alright, so you can keep your speed through this whole section. It'll just let you get up a little bit faster, but we're still going to just get the speed here and keep it through most of this next little section. And then, despite the right wall looking a little bit weird and smooth, you actually can wall jump off of it and get up to this teleportal without any issues. If it wasn't the case, we would obviously just like do a Shine Spark or bomb jump or something, but it's convenient that you can just wall jump up there because that's faster. And now we're gonna get Screw Attack, which I did say kind of trivializes some of the combat in this game. However, the next 2 bosses are far and away the hardest, except for Ravenbeak himself. Ravenbeak is definitely the hardest in minimum items, but outside of Ravenbeak, these next 2 bosses are far and away the hardest. The first one is a twin robo fight, where you're going to see a setup that I came up with myself in order to kind of separate them and keep them away from each other, so I can kind of just do 1v1 and then another 1v1 instead of having actually doing 2v1. And then the one after that is Goldsmith, which is famously a very finicky boss, but even more so when you don't have flash shift, because it means there's no way for you to get over him if you mess up. But yeah, so Screw Attack, if you don't know, is essentially just a item that turns your spin jumps into very, very powerful attacks. They're not quite the most powerful attack in the game anymore. In some of the older Metroid games, it would kill like literally everything. In this game, because you can get it kind of like halfway through your playthrough if you sequence break a lot, it only does like, I don't know, maybe like a few charge shots worth of damage. Like, it'll kill a lot of enemies in one hit, but there are definitely some other enemies that will not die in one hit. And while there are some enemies that if you bounce off of them with the Screw Attack, you won't take damage, there are other enemies where you will take damage, and almost all of them you'll die in one hit if you bounce off of them in this difficulty. Got up here just fine. Quick IBJ up to the boss fight, and here we go. So the manipulation I do is I stand in the middle of the platform here, I jump over him once he uses right way, I morph so that I dodge the bullets from the guy below, then I jump down here. There's a different attack pattern that's a little bit more favorable, where you can fight them entirely separately, but this is the one that I got, unfortunately. So I'm just going to stay down here. Wait for him to come down there. Whew, okay. That was a little bit scary. Played a little bit safe on the second half of that fight, but I'm happy to see that go deathless. That is, like I said, definitely one of the... I would easily call that the third hardest boss in this category. Because, like I said, everything will kill you. Literally the only thing that will kill you is if they aren't doing an attack and you do a Screw Attack on them. And I'm not even sure if like all those factors are exactly what's going on, because like sometimes you'll take contact damage and you'll die at 99 health, and sometimes you'll take contact damage and survive at 99 health, and I don't exactly know why, but I think that's what's going on. Anyway, so next up is Golzuna. It's a big crab guy. He has 3 phases. 2 of them are just like normal enemies. And the last one is a big crab, like a really big crab. Like, oh my gosh, you don't even know how big this crab is. You're about to be mind blown at how big this crab is. And it is so annoying because it has so many attacks that you'll just instantly die in this category if it does. And by so many, I mean exactly 1, but it does it a lot. I did a little bit early, so I'm gonna have to wait for an opportunity to Shine Spark this guy. His front claws don't die to Shine Spark, so if you do the Shine Spark into their claws, then you'll die. So I do a Ball Spark underneath Golzuna, and then I store a 2nd Shine Spark, and I don't get a favorable attack, so I need to... do missiles. Now he's gonna give me a favorable attack for this 3rd phase. Ah, okay, that was really unfortunate. That would have worked, but I stored a little bit too late, so it didn't work. And I messed up again. And this is the attack that always kills you, so I'm just gonna go ahead and load the checkpoint because that's faster than watching the death animation. So the attack there that would have happened is basically just it just fills the entire left half of the screen with damage. There's no way to dodge it, and you can't get over Golzuna. So it's just game over if you mess up that many times. Let's just give this another shot. Okay, I got another spark. Unfortunately, not getting the favorable attack pattern again. Let's try that again. This is actually not a very likely attack pattern. Getting rather unfortunate things happening right now. By the way, any contact damage with Golzuna will kill you. This I think is competitive with Ravenbeak for being the hardest boss in the game. So there are some other setups that people do that will make it so that you can kill him a little bit more consistently than what's going on right now. The problem is most of them rely on either eating a little bit of damage or flash shift or both, and I cannot afford any damage, and I don't have flash shift. That was just a execution mistake. Unfortunate. I've done this run deathless, if you can believe it. This boss is just being exceptionally mean right now. Whoops! Why am I trying to skip cutscenes like that's this kind of boss? A little bit early.
All right, if I go for a plug while we go through this.
Please do.
Midwest Speedfest Fall Frenzy is raising money for One Iowa, a charity organization that advances, empowers, and improves the lives of LGBTQ Iowans statewide. It is extremely important now and always to support LGBTQ individuals, especially in underrepresented areas and overlooked areas such as Iowa. You can donate directly to One Iowa by typing !donate in chat or by going to donate.midwestspeedfest.com. Additionally, One Iowa is a 501c charity, meaning your donation is tax deductible if you live within the United States, and your employer may match it if your employer does participate in charity matching. We have lots of funds incentives for all those runs tomorrow. We have the blindfolded we had the blindfolded Sly Cooper thing already met, which was outstanding. As we got the bid war for the Super Monkey Ball, and we still have time to get in those donations for the last stand run for Left 4 Dead 2.
So I finally got the sparks to all line up. I never actually got the favorable attack pattern, which is the most likely one, if you can believe it. You usually get after that little ball spark underneath its belly. What it'll do is it'll glow orange, it'll run towards you. Or sorry, no, yeah, it'll glow orange, it'll run towards you, and then it'll like lift up its hind legs, and that's when you can shine spark it. That is the most favorable. That works 100% of the time. It's very, very easy. If he does any other attack pattern, then what you have to do is you have to use that last shine spark store that you got to go above him, and then attack his butt, because he doesn't take any damage from the front. And then most of the time, he'll give you an attack pattern that you can finish off the fight with. I just got a little bit unfortunate and had a few execution mistakes, but luckily it's all over, and now we have the coveted frost bombs, which are the most useful item in the game. Promise. What they do is they fire the bomb in a cross. They make infinite bomb jumps trivially easy and a little bit faster, and they let you get over some gaps. And that's about the extent of their usefulness. You will also be seeing them used in the Raven fight in Phase 1, which is coming up relatively soon. After Golzuna, the difficulty does drop off a fair bit. The next boss fight they're going to be doing is entirely trivialized by Screw Attack. I shot a little bit early, which broke my spin, which broke my screw. So I died to contact damage. So, oops. But yeah, theoretically, the run is much easier after Golzuna. By the way, the thing you're seeing me do there, where I like shine spark through a room and then I shoot a charge beam as I'm doing shine spark, that's not something you are normally supposed to be able to do. But what happens is if you are holding down the shot button and then you if you're holding down the shot button, then it like knows that you're like storing a shot or a charge shot. And regardless of your state, it'll let you do that. And then if you press R, that'll change your cannon to missile mode. And normally, when you press R, if you have a charge beam charged, it'll release the charge beam as it enters missile mode. And despite the fact that you cannot normally fire charge shots, nor any sort of shots, including missiles, while in a shine spark, it will let you release your stored charge beam. And we call that R-shotting. It lets you sometimes open doors as you shine spark through them. So we're going to go through Arania. This section here is normally where the wave is, but before we can get to wave Emmy, we are going to need the storm missiles for the next big item. To go through the wave Emmy zone. Luckily, the wave Emmy is not home today. It is spawned because we saw its cutscene hours and hours ago. When we fought the first of the Chozo robot fights. That was actually the cutscene that activates wave Emmy. I'm not sure if that's under the hood, but regardless, you would normally never get here without having seen that. What I mean when I say under the hood, by the way, is that the event flags in the game kind of like cheat a lot, because sometimes there's like certain things like, oh, well, you would never be able to get here without having done such and such things, so we're not going to actually bother to check it. So in some categories, like, you can get into Frozen Artaria without the gravity suit, and even though you're not protected from cold, you don't take damage because they didn't actually program cold damage there, for example. Anyway, so this is SQ. It's a boss fight. You just kind of screw attack it in pretty much every category except for like intended percent, which is, I mean, you just bounce off of it. Oh my goodness, I thought that was going to kill it, and I almost died. Yeah, so that's one of those enemies that when you bounce off of it, you take contact damage even if you're in screw attack. So we try to do Charlies on it in this category, but if you mess up, you can at least survive one screw attack just fine. And then the last one is if you kill it, you'll never take damage, so that's good too. So now we have storm missiles, which are basically just a way to lock onto multiple targets and then shoot 3 missiles each at them. They don't actually do 3 times the damage of a normal missile shot. The individual storm missiles do very little damage, but there are some enemies that are programmed to take more damage. And it is just, like, generally always nice to have the ability to shoot, like, 15 missiles at something, even if you're not necessarily going to be doing 15 missiles worth of damage. So for this fight, we come in, we try to store a Shine Spark, we shoot storm missiles at this guy, we, oh my goodness, take some contact damage in one of the few scenarios where you don't die to contact damage and killing, and that will kill that first Chozo Robo. And they take reduced damage when you counter them and they're like in that recoiled state. So I just went ahead and took that opportunity to charge up the storm missiles because the Chozo robots are one of those enemies that do take additional damage from storm missiles. So even though it's not 15, or in their case 9, because it's a maximum of 3 locks onto them, it's not actually 9 missiles worth of damage for most people, but for them it's actually more than 9 missiles worth of damage. It's also very convenient that we start with 15 missiles, because if we started with any fewer, we would need to do some very, very creative things to get around these storm missile locks. Because even though they'll turn red if you shoot them with a normal missile, they don't actually activate for anything except for storm missiles, so you kind of need to, like, position yourself into a weird position and kind of like trick the game into thinking that you've locked onto more targets than you have if you don't have 15 missiles. Yeah, so this is the last central unit fight. It's not actually very hard. We just kind of run in, shoot it, or break the armor with speed, and then we kill the brain with screw. Pretty funny. And then next up we have the wave enemy itself. While the central unit was one of the, definitely the easiest one. I don't know why I said one of. It just is the easiest central unit. The wave enemy is a little bit involved. It's not one where it's trivial to just, like, start shooting directly where you stand at the start of the fight. You can. People do it. I have not been good at that trick recently. I've been doing no reset runs in this category the last week, and I've gotten that first try 0 times. So we're just going to do the slightly older method, which takes longer to kill because we need to, like, run over, kind of wait for him to come over, and then shoot him a bunch. However, it does put us farther to the left, so it's not actually that big of a time waste. Because otherwise, if we killed him, we'd all be all the way on the right side of the room, and we would need to, like, go into morph ball form and go through a tunnel. It is faster to kill him right away, but not a huge deal. And now we have Wave Beam, which is the end of the pseudo-wave era. Now our normal shots will just go through walls without needing to do anything fancy. So that's nice. So the next fight is going to be coming up right after we get back into Hanubia, now that we've taken care of all of our errands in Perennia. It is pretty much back-to-back. It's going to be Chozo fight, Chozo fight, Chozo fight. So the first one is a repeat of the fight that we did in Frozen Artaria, where it's the red guy with the shield. Unfortunately, there is a cutscene that happens before the fight starts, so we're not able to carry a Shine Spark into it. However, we do have Storm Missiles, and Storm Missile charges will carry through a skipped cutscenes, a skip cutscene of all things, but only sometimes. I'm not really sure the exact mechanics of that. For some reason, it doesn't work on the gold Chozo fight that happens after, but for the red Chozo fight, we can kind of start with some storm missiles, and we're going to be using that to hopefully skip the shield phase pretty easy. Yeah, that was definitely enough damage. So that skips the counter sequence to break the shield. And also does enough damage that he dies pretty quickly afterwards with just beam spam with the wave beam. The second Chozo fight, which is coming up after, does a little bit more, or has a little bit more health, so it's a little bit harder to break the shield. We also can't start with a pre-charged storm missile. And the method that you would normally use to skip the shield on that fight requires more than 15 missiles if you just use storm missiles. So I'm going to be trying to break it by using a mixture of storm missile, normal missile, and beam spam. However, there are specific rules that I don't necessarily need to get into about the way I'm allowed to do that. Rest assured, it's going to be a cool fight. You're going to love it. Right now we have Power Bomb. It does big damage, breaks a lot of things. It will carry the explosion between rooms, but not the charge. So we try to keep the... we try to break... Sorry, we try to release the Power Bomb between rooms, like right as we're entering another room, so that the charge will carry over and we're able to break things in 2 different rooms. That tube, and here we go. Whoops. Okay, so gold Chozo. I'm gonna start with a missile. Start charging storms. I think this is gonna work. It's always a little bit finicky. It also, I think, depends on which attacks that it does, because some of the attacks take longer and some of them are vulnerable for different amounts of time. But that fight went swimmingly. These fights are not usually anything you need to worry too much about. Like, the strategy, aside from, like, you know, oh, sometimes you have to counter the shield. The counter of the shield isn't, like, hard or anything. It just wastes a little bit of time. The real deal is that the next fight is against Ravenbeak. So, Ravenbeak is far and away the hardest boss in this game, especially in this category. So he has a lot of attacks. They're all pretty elaborate. He has more attacks and more attack patterns than anybody else. Every single one of them will kill you, except for 2, which are damage over time attacks. And much like Z57, like less than 1 second in those damage over time attacks will kill you. One of them does so much damage that we are going to use Dread Mode safe strats to try and avoid it, because otherwise you're almost always going to die over the course of the fight, just from the chip damage. Ooh, there we go. So yeah. He has 3 phases. The first one, we're going to be just kind of pelting him with super missiles, and he also takes damage from the cross bombs, and he takes damage from like every single individual part of the cross bomb, so it's exceptionally effective against him during phase 1. Fortunately, did not get a favorable attack pattern. This one is very, very favorable. That is the damage over time attack that I was talking about. And now he's going to do this red wave, which we just dodged, and then we are going to pelt him with super missiles during the counter sequence, which allows us to skip the gold phase. And now we're going to walk towards him and then go back towards the edge of his little laser attack every time it's over, so that if his next attack is the damage over time attack, this one specifically, we can do a melee away from him and then enter the aim so that we're in this very specific animation so that we can dodge the full brunt of this beam spam. We're going to be matching beam spam with beam spam. Actually, what I'm doing, I have 15 missiles. So for that attack, we go into the center of the room to avoid damage. For this one, when he stomps the ground, we want to be at the very edge of his wingtip. For this one, if we can't be on the side of the attack where the beam ends, then we want to be underneath his wings. And so I'm doing Dread Mode safe strats. It's working out really well right now. We actually got through phase 2 without taking any extra damage. Mess that up a little bit. Contact damage will one-shot you against this fight, by the way. We are always going to take that counter sequence because even though he does take slightly reduced damage during the counter sequence, he is so lethal during any other part of the fight that you just kind of appreciate the free damage. During this attack, the only way that we can really realistically break it is with the power bombs. There is another attack that is most efficaciously killed with, or like destroyed with power bombs, and that would be this one. That is the charge, or that is the Shine Spark attack that he does. I can hear the music, so I know that he's almost dead. So I didn't bother doing the counter sequence that time. I just took the counter and then went ahead and finished him off with one more super missile. So that was Ravenbeak. That was the hardest boss in the game. I'm really happy I got that first try. Kind of redemption for how Golzuna went. Very nice. And now the only thing really left to do is kill this big ugly thing that we get in QTE. This is basically just Ravenbeak after he crashes to the ground and gets infected by an X. All we have to do is wait until he has a certain amount of close to us and then deal a certain amount of damage, so I delay shooting the beam so that I reach that damage threshold when he's at the proximity threshold, and that way I don't waste time slowing him down with the beam. And the escape sequence is going to be relatively straightforward. We do need to do a couple things slightly different because we don't have space jump. So for example, I needed to do that Shine Spark there in order to get up to the escape area. If you had space jump, then it would actually be slightly faster to jump up the whole way, I believe. I might be wrong about that. It's been a while since I played the category with space jump. We're going to be doing a small Shine Spark, or a small speed boost here, but we're actually not going to Shine Spark. We'll go up here, power bomb between rooms. I should also mention that we don't have any Aeon during this entire sequence here. So if we had Flash Shield, we couldn't use it. We also can't use Cloak. And there's limited availability of the use of Speed Booster, so this whole escape sequence is kind of like a back to basics on the movement. Have to do more melee off of ledges and whatnot. We're gonna make it perfectly fine. This is a little bit of a slow escape, but we're gonna be alright. Gonna try and do a Shine Spark here to get off this little vent, and then time is going to be when I get to the edge of this hallway now. So that was Metroid Dread. Minimum items, no major glitches, hard mode. Going to see our final stats here. It should show that we have 0% and then some amount of deaths that I really hope I don't get too embarrassed by. I think it was like 10. 9? I'll take 9. 9's not bad. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you to Midwest Speed Fest for hosting this run. Shoutouts to the Dread community, Metroid Fan and EOD Techs for doing so much work to get this category as cool as it is. Really excited to show it off in a marathon setting. It's definitely one of the lesser appreciated categories, but I think it definitely deserves a lot more love. Thanks to everybody saying GGs in chat. So yeah. Do we have a host in here, or?
We're just getting ready for the thrill. Thank you so much for that awesome Metroid Dread run.
Thank you.